gives me much pleasure to be here this morning. Ladies and gentlemen, there's probably not that much to say, except to say it's probably the most extensive consultation that we've been through any proposed bill to Parliament for a very long period of time. I know the family law, they took 2 years, but probably because they wanted a lot of sitting allowances at that point in time. But the point is that this is now about the 13th or 14th draft. When the CEO talked about finalizing it, I said let's have another round of consultations. So this is for those of you who in particular are not from FECA, even those from FECA, this is really your last chance, so to speak, to contribute to this particular bill before it's presented to Parliament. Of course, Parliament will then go through its own process where it does get referred to a standing committee. Then people have the opportunity to comment on it again. But I think the idea is to get the draft as close as possible to the final version that should be put as an act of Parliament. I think it's probably a bit superfluous to say as to why we need to have a transparent set of laws. It is very, very clear as to why we should. Tax laws, in our opinion, really needs to be something that's very transparent. Everybody should know the rules of the game, and people should essentially just come along and pay their tax. Should there be a particular issue in terms of interpretation, there should be certain guidelines, because obviously you cannot always envisage what will happen, what specific scenario will take place. But the law should be simple enough, yet inclusive enough to be able to address those types of issues. And then in the event it doesn't, then we should have some specific guidelines. Whether we have practice notes, etc. As you know that, for example, the Companies Office used to do that. I hope also that in this process, I always sometimes see that there seems to be some type of tension between those who are enforcing tax laws and those who are representing people who are paying tax, or those people who are actually taxpayers. One always tries to minimize, the other one always tries to maximize. But I think we need to come to a different mindset, and mindset is that there is a particular law, there's a particular policy that's put in place, and there's a particular tax that's due. And we simply need to go along and pay that tax without the tax enforcer being overburdensome, overbearing, and without the taxpayer being completely elusive about it. We have now a very, very attractive system of taxation in Fiji. One of the lowest in the region, indeed one could say one of the lowest in the world, compared to the size of our country, the size of our GDP, and the size of our population. To pay 20% corporate tax, pay 17% if you're regional global head office, to pay 10% if you're listed on the South Pacific Stock Exchange, and to pay income tax, personal income tax at 20%, and if you earn more than $275,000, you have the 1 point whatever it is that you pay on the additional amount. These are very, very attractive tax rates. And the whole idea, one of the ideas behind this was to ensure that we have greater compliance. Because if the tax regime is not as burdensome, then people will stop trying to evade tax. And there's a simple logic behind it. And most countries have proven that if you have a simplified and a attractive tax rate, there is greater compliance. And indeed, we've seen that the revenue collection of FERCA has increased. Some of it, of course, can be partially attributed to that. And the others, of course, is because of the fact the economy is growing, so there's obviously a greater collection rate. So, ladies and gentlemen, as part of this particular process, as you know that government is going to deliver the budget on November the 6th this year. That is the date that's been set now. We have also, as you know, as part of the process, we'll be having public consultations for the budget. There is a very good set of consultations that's going around, which is the National Development Plan consultations. There is in excess of about 600 different locations in which meetings will be held. Most of them are nearly concluded now, where they're receiving input from members of the public. But apart from that, which will obviously feed into the budget process, is we are going to have 3 consultations, one in Suva, Lautoka, and Lombasa, on people's input to come make verbal representations on what they would like to see in the budget. An advertisement is also going out in the next couple of days regarding receiving written submissions from members of the public and, of course, private sector and NGOs. We will also then, as part of the process, we've already received an invitation from the Fiji Chamber of Commerce. They want to have a whole day session on the budget, which of course we'll all be attending that. So at least 4 public sets of consultations on the budget. And we will, of course, I'd like to, as part of that, announce, as you know, we announced a couple of weeks ago about the extension of the amnesty period, where those people who have assets sitting offshore, which have not been declared, we've extended the timeline to October now. And we'll, of course, be issuing various practice notes will be issued on that by FERCA. So please tell your clients or tell yourselves that there is no penalty will be imposed, no assessment will be imposed on any asset declaration, of course, but going forward, any income derived from those assets from post-2016, that is obviously assessable. But as far as any period prior to that, there's nothing assessable on the assets that may be sitting offshore. We also like to announce today the extension of the amnesty we had given for those local taxpayers who actually accept the liabilities or the penalties that have been imposed but do not have the means to pay that. And we had announced that there would be a payment arrangement that could be made in this period. So we'd like to also extend that extension period to October. There are many people who, for example, because of some of the accountants not doing their job properly, I see a few of them here. Not that you people have not done your job properly, but I'm saying generally we've had small income taxpayers who have not, been given all the information and they've been assessed. And FERCA has come down on them and they said, look, we want to pay, but we don't have the means to pay so. And we accept the liability, we want to have a payment arrangement. So this is essentially to make it easier for them. I mean, from government's perspective, if we have an existing taxpayer, let's not drive them so much to the ground where they actually stop being a taxpayer at all. The idea is that they do pay their taxes. So if we are able to reach an arrangement with them where they continue to then be able to pay their tax and also thrive as a business and as a taxpayer, then obviously everybody wins. So that's the approach we've taken. So I'd like to make that announcement today regarding the extension for the locals, Fijians who are, based on the assets in Fiji, who've been assessed, they accept the liability but don't have the means to pay that immediately. So ladies and gentlemen, the whole approach, as you can see from government's perspective, working together with FERCA and the board, is to make taxation a bit more attractive, make it an environment where both parties are able to have a very working and good working relationship, and where everybody benefits. Because the whole idea is that if the system is transparent and there's efficiency within the system, then the economy actually benefits overall. And that's what we're seeing. And I think there's some very, very wonderful opportunities for Fiji at this point in time. We've seen a lot of international engagement through multilateral agencies, even at a bilateral level, from country to country, where there's a lot of interest in Fiji. A lot of people do want to expend their funds in Fiji, whether it's through infrastructure or through the private sector, public infrastructure, private sector. So we want to be able to take advantage of that. And I think there are new opportunities in the services industry in Fiji. Fiji is very ideally placed, not just geographically, but in terms of taking account of the demographics, the capacity of our people, in particular the young people, the level of qualifications we have, the ability to speak English. And I've been told that we speak in what we call a neutral accent manner. So things like call centers, etc., just to put it in perspective. We were told by some call centers that when they go and set up a call center or data processing place in a country like India or Philippines, they have to spend literally hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not millions of dollars, to train people to get rid of their accents and speak in an accent that would be, friendly to an American or Australian or some European who's calling them. Whereas apparently in Fiji, we all have a neutral accent. I could argue and say it depends what school you went to, but generally, we have a neutral accent. So they don't have to. So Fiji is attractive that way. So I think the services industry is one area that I think there's a lot of potential for Fiji. We're only 3-4 hours away from good markets in Australia and New Zealand. There's a lot of potential in the manufacturing industry. So the idea of getting the tax laws in place very quickly and with everybody's assistance, I think there's enormous opportunity, not just for the government, but of course the private sector, and indeed the general Fijian population, where we can have job creation. So with those few words, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much, and I look forward to all of you contributing in a very constructive manner, and we look forward to the presentation by the good professor. Good night. Thank you.